Fresh and
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all of my buds. And today we got a great episode for you. We are joined once again by Mr. Pat Shaw from the Action Point YouTube channel. She does some fun stuff then that just gets totally off the rails, which I love. And hopefully he gets off the rails today. And we're going to have a great show. We're going to kind of basically set the stage for nationals because, well, we're both upset we won't be there, but very excited to watch all the action happen with all of our friends and pros out there that are going to be competing, which is very exciting. But before we get to the show, I do want to shout out to the sponsor of the show, which is you, the patron, which you can find a link for the Patreon in the link tree in the show notes, where helps keep the mics hot and the lights on, some bonus content and rewards on there as well. On top of that, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. If you're listening on Spotify or wherever, rate the Spotify thingy or iTunes or wherever, and go check out the YouTube as well. We hit over 500 subscribers. I am currently working on a Levi cosplay. It is very hard. But I'm excited to show it to all of you once I get it to a point that I'm happy with, which hopefully should be sooner rather than later, but, best laid plans of mice and men. Also, in the same link tree that you found a link for the Patreon, you can find a link for the Buds Discord, best place in the world to hang out, and a plethora of other things like Twitter, X, whatever you call it, and but also 9:30 Easterns. While I might be getting a little bit busier, hopefully I don't get too busy that we can't do it as often, but we're going to continue to try to do it as often as we can. But the Bud Rush Bellow is a 9:30 Eastern Wednesdays live podcast that I do with Mr. Viz, aka Gary. And now we're going to throw it to Pat, but stay tuned. A word from Charmer at the end.
Wait,
right.
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Oh my
I'm sorry.
God.
I'm sorry.
I just edited all that out. Well, here we are, folks, with Pat Shaw from the Action Point, Mr. No Rails himself. How you doing, buddy?
Hey.
You're good? Yeah, is that good?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me. Yeah. No, I'm full of piss and vinegar. I had to screw you up there. I'm sorry.
Well, we're happy to have you, Pat. Regardless, I swear. But we're having a great show today. I talked about it at the top of the show already, but, Nats is coming up, and as two people that want to be there, we're going to chat about what we think is going to happen since we're not there to, win, obviously, to ruin the hopes and dreams of all the pros out there. But we're the ones.
They're
now.
safe this time.
Yeah. We did them all a favor, but I wanted to get you on, first of all, to talk about that, but also to kind of catch up, see how you're doing. And, you've been doing a lot, I remember last time you were on, you had just started the Action Point, which you had described as bespoke content.
Oh, yeah.
Which I need to kind of clarify at the time. So, what's going on and how's the bespoke content game going for you?
It's going well. It's slow but steady. I like to think that I've been kind of crouched, waiting to pounce until the right kind of moment struck, and I think I hit a mark that I liked with the last episode of the Action Point. We tried a new format, and it was a lot of fun. The feedback was really great. It instigated a ton of discussion on social media, and both good and bad. But I think it works, and I'm lining up my next panel for the next episode. Hopefully, I want to record it and get it out before Nats. So it's Monday. I'm trying to get people on to record for Wednesday, and if I can post it by this Friday, I'll be happy with that. But yeah, it's going well, I think, because of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I gotta say, it is a cool format, and we talked about it a bit before the show. But it's around the horn, right? ESPN's around the horn.
Yeah.
Kind
Yes.
of
Yep. It
panel.
is. Yep.
Trying to bring the sports broadcasting vibe to Flesh and Blood, which you had been trying to do anyway and been successful at, which is great. Now, I think it's awesome because you had said. I'm ripping them off. First of all, Around the Horn doesn't care, right? That somebody in Flesh and
I
Blood is
don't
doing
think,
it, and nobody else is doing it.
Disney's gonna come after me.
Yeah, well, they might for your Lorcana content. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But that is it's pretty cool. I always enjoyed that. There's almost something comforting about those ESPN shows. I don't even know if that's on air anymore. Around the Horn, I guess it still is, right?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I had to check, but yes, it is. It is. It's one of the. It's almost like a bygone era type of thing. Like I think the thing you hear about most is like Skip Bayless kicking people out of Fox Sports in that just talking head hot take debate type of show. I don't want to degrade it to like the lowest common denominator,
Sure.
but I've always had a special place for the guys at Around the Horn, and very frequently local columnists for us. We're always on, so gotta represent the well-respected area of I don't know what you call this at this point, TCG flash journalism. Trying to get hot news of the moment out and have people talk about it.
Well, I mean, I like that style of content. It's nice because it's not, because you mentioned it's like a bygone era, right, Pat? It's like there are like ESPN now is just, what did Aaron Rodgers say for 12 hours?
Yeah,
and we're just
it's a skeleton crew. It's one person and a camera. AI is running the production booth, and the same three people are working behind the desk 20 hours a day.
Just regurgitating the same stuff over and over. And it's like
and Adam Schefter.
Adam Schefter. Yeah, it's like, let's bring him on, So I mean, I'm glad that you're taking from the good parts of ESPN and not the parts that I've grown to hate. But for the channel, you didn't want to tie yourself down to just Flesh and Blood. So there's obviously some other stuff you had been looking at. Do you have any future plans for the show?
I still want to explore different TCGs out there. We were doing okay with Lorcana content, but that was life in the way. Wife picked up some extra shifts here and there, ended up being busy with our child in that same kind of time frame, ended up being more 2 ships passing in the night than we like to do, but it was necessary, but that means that at least one aspect of the channel has kind of been on the wayside a bit. But now that Lorcana has been released, so it came out on the 18th, we have not been able to get our hands on any as of yet, but we haven't been able to go to the store to try and get some. But as soon as we do, I think you'll see some gameplay towards it. We're both committed to not really taking it seriously. We're very much into it for like the Disney characters and the fun of it, and to have a game that we can play with one another and enjoy and talk about. Ravensburger and Disney have kind of shit the bed a little bit. They were in Disney on the 18th. I was not, but she was in Disney World on the 18th, and for weeks they were like, LGSs and Disney parks, and like the day before they were like, no Disney parks. And we're like, I'm really banking on getting some product from there, but alas, we'll not. But once we do, and we find a rhythm here, we'll come back with You Made Me Inc. We'll definitely have some gameplay coming up. I've also been involved in playing some Alpha Clash TCG. The guys over at Rising Empire Studios have created a nifty little game. The gentlemen over at the Flesh and Pod podcast also have a Alpha Clash podcast. They've been involved with a lot of the play testing and such. And Dagan White, friend of he's Bud and a Fapper as well, and he's like the top player. Like he's got the top elo as he tends to do. But he's basically like playtesting and helping design it, I think, at this point, part of the game. But they just released set one out to the public at the end of July. So it's out. It's fun. It's a little mix of everything that you've played since the 90s. And it throws in some comic books and superhero stuff, and it's fun. So set one is out now. It's called The Awakening, and you may have seen me on some streams playing, but I had a box opening not too long ago with the Clash kits. But you'll definitely see some kind of deck tech and some gameplay coming from there as well.
Yeah.
What else do I got?
I mean, those are. I mean, so two hot games right now. Obviously, Lorcana. I mean, if people can get the product, I guess. I got to test it out at Armory on Thursday last week. The Bearded Dragon in Bernardsville, New Jersey. They had a bunch of test decks, and I got there early. Met up with Craig Krempels, and he was sitting there eating his dinner, and he was like, "You want to try this out?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." Tried it out. Not for me, but then again, neither is Magic anymore, and it felt very Magic-y. So, and that's fine. And I'm not tied to the IP like a lot of people are, right? The reason I love Flesh and Blood so much is I love the IP. If you love Disney, it seems like the right thing, and it seems great for kids, to be honest, which I ideally hope that's what it's for. So, but Alpha Clash I've not, obviously I hear a lot about it. It's obviously Dagan White is just gonna
he's just farming. He's just farming it now.
Yeah. He's just Dagan, if you're out there, just keep doing you, man.
God bless you.
Yeah. Hey, listen, there's a lot of great games going on right now. I mean, would you say that Flesh and Blood opened the door for a lot of other games to really crack into people's hands here?
Because, yeah, right. If you, it depends on where you decide that, like the TCG, like Renaissance, Golden Age, however people are framing it these days. When that started, you could really look towards the like post Kickstarter, right? Flesh and Blood as an investment vehicle, spiky prices as kind of the beginning of the last several years of TCGs, Kickstarters, trying to produce a valuable product, seeing a lot sink, seeing a few swim. But now you're seeing, especially in the last year or two, I think you're seeing the kind of evolution of that, where there is apparently space for a lot of niche TCGs out there for a little bit for everyone. There's that Battle Spirit Saga. They have a Pro Tour, right? They have a competitive play structure. Argent Saga. I don't know anything about that. I know it exists and it is a game. Sorcery TCG just came out. Cryptic just came out. Both of those are very Magic-like in their gameplay. Alpha Clash as well. But you see, even if you go to TCG Player, right, and you're trying to buy cards, there's a dozen different games on TCG Player available right now. Vanguard, there's a million of them. Some of them, their names get really complicated, but there seems to be now space for everybody. But I think that does have its limits, and I think people got to start be wary of trying to follow a formula of more successful and more widely available TCGs. Like Alpha Clash is a great card game, right? It's supported by Realm Games. They just held a 1K there. It's not being picked up by TCG Player at the moment, but it literally just went from Kickstarter to release right now. But in that same vein, there's a big push. There's some publicity. The 1K had it was under 20 players,
okay,
right? But huge a huge push, a lot of publicity, not a lot of players, but you could argue there's something like 300 total players in the world, right? So, can you expect to really push, streaming content, gameplay, high prestige? You had casters doing play-by-play for that game. When you have the smaller numbers, it almost feels like you can, if you set yourself up for a huge thing and it's actually little, it can seem like a failure. But if you're following the formula of a much bigger TCG, you're kind of setting yourself up for that. So I think we just got to be aware as these TCGs come in to the appropriate scale of that. You're not, there's going to be several hundred players, several thousand players, several 100,000 players, whatever it's going to be. But, you got to temper expectations a little bit here and there, I think. And as long as we do that, I think there's room. There's room for everybody to grow and do what they got to do.
Oh, for sure. And it's worth noting that, you look at LSS, what they did, right? They defied a lot of odds there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the game's great and they had a plan, right? That was the biggest thing.
Sure.
I think sometimes they don't, like these companies don't have a plan. Not to say that any of these companies don't, but like sometimes the ones that fail just were like, oh, we did it. What next? And
right.
It seemed like LSS had that at least in mind anyway. So hopefully, these other games, and I think it's positive that there's a bunch of games people can play, because to me, it means that people are playing something that's not like big, right? I mean, not to say that, playing the big three or whatever is bad, but
right.
I think it's a positive thing for Flesh and Blood, because if people are willing to try other things outside of Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon,
absolutely,
they're definitely willing to, because they'll play this and be like, this is a lot of fun, and then they'll meet, because there's a lot of crossover, right? Because these early adopters, they all have a similar kind of, I guess, track record. Like those early adopters probably tried Flesh and Blood. They probably still play Flesh and Blood. Dagan White plays Flesh and Blood. Dagan will say, oh yeah, Flesh and Blood's awesome, right? So I think it's all positive. Now, that's what's coming out down the pipes with your channel and well, basically trading card games in general. What are you doing in terms of playing Flesh and Blood these days?
I feel like I've been playing a lot of Flesh and Blood. So I think the big thing I announced at the top of my last episode, but I joined up with the Tavern Brawlers as they're on their competitive team and as part of their like community building efforts. So Tavern Brawlers has Discord. They host. They're one of the only spots now that really run regular weekly, monthly, quarterly events for not just Flesh and Blood at an online armory level, but also they run Keyforge. They have Alpha Clash weekly tournaments. They do Battle Spirits. They have Argent Saga. They have basically whatever gets your rocks off. They provide a bit of an avenue to play on an online space, whether that's webcam or TTS. And they're one of the few, they're kind of like the last bastions of that kind of I think support in the TCG space. So I've done a lot of playing with them, a lot of working with them in their team members in the last year and a half or so. Anyways, so especially in the last few months, we've been really heavily involved, getting ready for Pro Tour Baltimore, getting ready for Nationals, getting ready for Road to Nationals. So it's kind of a natural progression to put a name behind it. So, Pat Shaw, Tavern Brawler is what I'm doing there. Caveat being, I don't actually have like a huge competitive event coming up, so I won't be like in a jersey. I will not be in Vegas, and I probably won't be in Barcelona. But I will be helping the team get ready for those things, and playing those test games, being the gauntlet deck, if you will.
Sure.
But like in the meantime, I go to my armory once a week. We got that really firing. We're at 8 to 10 players, every week. And there's 2 online leagues that as a fab dad really helped me stay involved. So both the Tavern Brawlers and the Kitchen Table leagues are basically how I keep my sanity and feel like I'm still involved in the game. So playing fairly regularly. Deck choice, may be a little questionable, and we'll talk about that. But I feel as I would say I feel as involved in the game from a player standpoint than I have in a long time, and kind of that working on that life balance, and pulling back when I needed to, and kind of pushing forward on some of the other things has allowed me to sit down and actually play more games more often and not have that be disruptive. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. Steady as she goes throughout the rest of the year. I think like there's no pressure. I got a couple buddies going to nationals local that won their RTNs, and so they're leaving Thursday night. So last couple days of local test prep for those guys, and they'll be off, and I'll be rooting for them.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen. Well, I'm right there with you with like competitive events this year. Like we don't. I mean, not that I have a jersey, but it's 2024 is our year, Pat. So we're gonna.
I'm saying,
yeah,
that's it.
Pro Tour first and second, or the other way around, whatever you want. Right. But we're gonna do
awkward moment. James White, we drew. I'm sorry, we're splitting it.
But you mentioned deck choice, and I mean, I know what you're playing because you talk a lot about it in the Buds Discord. Check out the Buds Discord. The Levia Adventures. You are playing my girl, and I want to know your thoughts.
All right, so I if you've been following my journey in Flesh and Blood, we know that I started on Levia, and it was a terrible negative experience because she constantly killed herself. Just more death by blood debt suicide than anything else, and it really frustrated me. Almost made me quit the game until I picked up Katsu, and that was like I tried for 2-3 months solid, I'd say, before I finally switched off of her. Haven't thought about her since. Dust Till Dawn comes out. Look at these shiny new cards. These make Levia all better. Everything that was wrong with her has been fixed, and now she is an A to S tier hero. Go give her a try. Man, I tell you what, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like I've been sold a bag of goods here, and I don't much appreciate it. There is, so I'll tell you the good things, okay? Some of the new cards are fantastic. I do think that I think that LSS wants more Dust Till Dawn cards to be involved in how you play with her than people are actually using, and I'm not sure they're good enough though. When we use them, but Slithering Shadowpede, for instance, I think is a fantastic addition, and where I would love for her to go in the future with that kind of design. Let me banish a card and be able to play it, so I don't feel like I've just burnt my deck anyways. But that's very good. The Demi Hero is very good. It opens up I think a different phase of the game than people are used to. You have early, mid, late game, and with Levia you now have your early, mid transition game, and then your late game after that. So you're fighting for this new benchmark of 13 life. Levia Redeemed is a little. I just lost a game at my armory last week because I don't know if I've ever actually turned over and looked at what she did. So I ended my turn at 11 with 13 plus cards in blood debt, and I was like, I go to 8 and I flip her. And my opponent was like, you sure don't.
No, you just die.
It's like, what are you talking about? And there's a few of us playing Levia locally, and I was like, guys, let's look at this. And oh man, it doesn't do the blood debt thing. Oh shit. So reading the card helps, but it was the first time I think I've ever even tried to use Levia Redeemed. But that it does provide a really unique part of the game, trying to get that hero out. When you flip, when you succeed, it's amazing. It is great. But people are really wise now. They got wise real quick on making sure that you don't get your blood debt. You don't get to 13 via blood debt. So it's a fun part of the game. There's a couple other cards I think I've been experimenting with. Blood dripping frenzy is something that I feel strongly about, and I'm not quite sure how it fits, but it's definitely I think it's got blood rush-esque potential, but it's got to find the right home. And I don't think it's quite there yet, but it's definitely an interesting build around that I'm still kind of working with. But man, rolling one sucks. It is such a bad feeling to play, and it's I have a lot to say about rolling ones. I think we'll one of the questions later. I think I'll really just let it out. But man, if there was a piece of equipment, right? If Scabskins said, if you roll roll a dice, if you get 3 or higher or 4 or higher, you get an extra action point. But it didn't kill you if you didn't roll that. And like either it's got blade break or something like that, right? Break, roll, I don't know. But if it didn't just lose your turn, when you roll a 1, have the roll, have go again. I don't know what it is, but don't give me 2 action. Don't give me 3 action points, so I can't roll a 6. But don't give me a 1. Let me roll and possibly get another one, and I think that would be good. But we live in a world where I roll a 1, break gambler's gloves, and roll a 1. I don't know how many. The 1 dot is one of 6 different sides on these things, right? There is a 1 in 6 chance you're supposed to hit that. Over time, I don't know. I don't know what 1/6 is over time, but I tell you what, you shouldn't hit as much as I do, and it is a really depressing time when that happens.
Well, I think that the issue is, right, when you roll the 6, you never really need it. So it's not like, I rolled the 6, we finally did it. You're just happy to have the second action point, right? So it just, and it's changed a little bit now, right? Because now we have a whole nother set of 1-for-6s in the deck with Shadowpede. So like, I'll tell you, I've rolled 6 a couple times at this point, or actually more than a couple times, where I was able to go 6, 6, 6 with like 1 blue, and it was like, this is the best deck ever created. Thank you LSS, thank you James White. But the deck is so different now, and like you mentioned the transition game, right? Like where you're trying to flip. And it's like now like it's hard. Like there are so many more decision points in this deck, which there already was. That now you got to make decisions like, well, I have 8 blood debt and I'm at 20. Do I just go for it now? Or I have tempo. I'm not even worried about because like Levi used to just win without it. So why not just put the pedal to the metal and just like try to finish out the game? It's a lot of like figuring out what you're supposed to do. And I think we're still not only a long way from figuring out like the exact like decision points there, but also the exact build. And there's a lot of cards that we have that I don't know. They seem good. Maybe they're not. Maybe we're looking at it all wrong. And like you said, maybe they want us to use more of these banished from hands at random, So we'll see.
Really, they're just not great though, and that's the problem. Like Ram Raider it's a 6 attack, 2 cost, banish a random card. If it's a 6 attack, Ram Raider gains go again. Like unless that is literally a slithering Shadowpede, you lose that card. And it's where's the value in that? I've heard discussions that it helps with some of the wizard matchups, but I really I can't see playing a card, pitching a card, and losing a card for 6 go again in Levia like that in that way. At least with like pulping or wild ride, you put ammo into your graveyard, right? So you're not completely losing that card. but without it being set up specifically for Slithering Shadowpede, you are losing that card. Yeah. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of the Dust Till Dawn mechanic that has come up for Levia. I do think that. Well, in terms of like big picture Shadow Brute stuff, I think that the 18 damage turn is a good goal to have, right? Mm-hmm. We try to get there with Blood Rush Bellows, Claw attack. I think that Hexagore plays into a scabs-less entity in which you could potentially get those 18 damage turns regularly, as long as you basically have to either get an extra action point somewhere or go again on one or more attacks and then follow up with a Hexagore. But I've found that the consistency in which I get to 6 Blood Debt is great. I feel like I can just get there. So my old qualms with using Hexagore, not being able to swing with it in the first 3/4 of the game, that's out for me. I think I can use it in the after the first quarter of the game, if you will. After 2 or 3 turns, I feel like I'm there, more often than not. And then it becomes, how can I manage an 18 damage turn or close to with the knowledge that a 6 attack weapon is there at my disposal.
Yeah,
right? And I think that's where my mind is going with how do I stop Levi from punching me in the face constantly.
Well, it'll be interesting. It is one of those things. The design of the Shadow Brute cards in Dust Till Dawn. It's like I just want to like be at LSS and be like, what are you guys doing with this stuff? I just want to see.
Yeah.
Because like, it's interesting. I remember when they had like the designer challenge or whatever it was at Worlds. One of the employees played Levia, but it was like roll scabs, play Shadow, or play like tomes, like and like tomes and prey.
Yeah.
So like, are they still on that kind of plan, or are they designed a whole new thing? Like, could it just be like, oh no, you're supposed to be like blocking with these and like slowly turning out Blood Debt. Like, you're not supposed to be like having like huge turns, but who knows? I mean, we can only speculate. Hopefully somebody cracks it. I talk a lot about like, I want to see people brew with Levia, not just like try to get out of the mindset of what we knew. So we'll see. But speaking of the mindset of what we knew and me being great at segues, there's a lot of talk about who the GOAT is these days. I'm bringing this up facetiously because you alluded to it on your last show, or about your last show, that there's basically, I'll wrap it up for people. Our friend Flake said something about the GOAT conversation came out. It was taken out of context and it was made to look like Flake was being an idiot. Whatever, he's not. So we know that. And honestly, it was great publicity for you, Pat, and for your channel. So, but
I tell you what, if I could get the views that Butcher's Clip got, oh man, I'd be monetized right now.
Yeah. But
I'm glad I got out there.
Yeah,
I did. You know what? I crossed over 100 subscribers. That it's gotten a lot of views for me. So I'm happy with it, and I think it showed off the example that the format can give, and and props to Flake. Flake, if you watch the show and go to my channel, go to Off the Rails TCG, click on the action point. It's episode 8. It's called Hot Takes. Watch the whole thing, and Flake starts by saying, he thinks that the GOAT question is a stupid question, but he's not going to leave me hanging. He's going to answer for the sake of answering. I literally have a stopwatch going with these people. They are on a hard time limit. They only have 60 to 90 seconds to get their point out. That's the point of the show. And he said his thing, and he was being more hypothetical than not. And Butcher did. He really clipped that. If he clipped just a little bit wider, I think he would have, saved a lot of controversy. But there it is.
There it is. And you know what? For, maybe that's the only part you saw. So, it is interesting. And, you actually put some notes here. And I'm gonna tune in or just chime in real quick. I also think it's dumb, the conversation, mostly because the game's almost 4 years old, or is 4 years old,
right.
And the player base isn't that big, right?
No. But so my stance is I have been a proponent of the GOAT question for some time. I've put polls up, and it's been fun. For the longest time, this wasn't controversial. It was Matt Rogers, right? Yeah. And no one argued that. It was Matt Rogers because he was the winningest, the most popular. He was the person. Going through basically the crew meta all the way through 21 RTN season, and what I think is fun about the GOAT question is we're having some fun watching history as it's happening, right? We are in the time of the beginning of the game where we are seeing players become the great ones in this game. If we are assuming that this game is going to have some longevity to it, we are watching the Randy Buehlers and Kai Buds of Magic fame, the early 90s legendary figures of competitive Magic. We're seeing the early day figures of the legendary figures of now Flesh and Blood forming as we speak. We have Michael Hamilton, we got Pablo Pintor, we got Michael Fang, we got all these people that are actively competing at the highest level and building their resumes for what will soon be eventually like a Hall of Fame type career. We're so young that we don't have a system yet for that, and so it's going to be fun when the Hall of Fame is introduced and hopefully these players are enshrined in that and given whatever the commiserate award is for that. I think we've talked before about the potential of how we escalate the Pro Tour system into points and the Hall of Fame, and how rewarding these high-level Pro Tour players with travel fees and things like that, and that come with that highest level. But I think we're watching that right now as it's happening. These players becoming what will eventually be a legitimate conversation in the greatest of all time. So I think having this now is a good way to acknowledge those players who are being great currently, and also allowing an avenue in the debate to show where our gaps are in our observations.
Sure.
And to that end, one moment.
Drink break. And back.
Oh man, yeah. So to that end, the GOAT conversation from the Action Point, I think, brought a lot of. We had Nick Butcher, but we also had Erica Forsloff develop a spreadsheet that she called the GOAT spreadsheet, where she did the math. Right? She did the math and she put all the. She accumulated as many competitors as she could get through as many events, and she has the results of number of top 8 placements, number of first place placements in those, and total money earned in those. And I think she clarifies what she used, but I think it's basically battle hardened and up. I'm not sure she's using PTI events. She may. I think it's basically anything that's considered like a rated event at this point. But let's talk a little bit about the GOAT conversation. Number of top 8 placements. That's a pretty good place to start, don't you think?
I think it's the best place to start.
Who do you think's number 1? Number 1 in number of top 8 placements.
Hayden Dale.
You are incorrect.
Oh.
Hayden Dale is 29th.
Oof.
Well, It's a little off. 28th.
But number one in our hearts, Hayden.
That's right.
Who's number
you may
one?
be a little surprised. Not shocking. Brody Spurlock has the most number of top 8 placements. Remember, we're talking battle hardened and up, right?
Okay.
So
That's pretty
Brody
impressive.
Spurlock has 15 top 8 placements. Guess who's number 2 just behind him
Michael Fang?
with 14? That's right, Michael Fang. Rounding out the top 3 is Matt Rogers at 12 placements at top 8. Top 4 would include Michael Hamilton for that one. Now, number of first place placements. Who do you think has the highest number of wins, battle hardened and up in Flesh and Blood right now?
Is that Michael Fang?
It is Michael Hamilton.
Hamilton.
With 6 wins. Number 2 though is Michael Fang at 5. Number 3, Brody Spurlock at 3.
Okay.
Now, if we go to total money earned, okay, number 1 by a wide margin, and I think this is kind of obvious. Michael Hamilton.
Yeah.
$100,000 of the world championship.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
can put you up there. All right. Number 2, Death Taxes and Michael Fang in the top of these rankings. We don't need to. The numbers is out there, but it's he's basically won $60,000 so far playing Flesh and Blood, according to the spreadsheet. And number 3 is Pablo Pintor. Shout out to number 4, Matt Folks, 4th in money earned there. But Michael Fang, number 2 in total money earned, number 2 in first place placements, and number 2 in top 8 placements, the only player to be in the top 3 of all 3 of those. So if there was a GOAT conversation to be had right now, I think there's a very strong case that Michael Fang is in fact that GOAT. So
Sure.
that's
where
I'm going.
And I said on Twitter that data is nothing without context, and I wasn't on any of those lists, but here I am.
No, me neither. Me neither. So I do want to shout out Erica Forsloff. I believe that's her Twitter handle as well.
Erica's awesome.
She's or X handle. At Erica Forsloff with a K. And she has the Fab Goat spreadsheet, and it's a Google Docs spreadsheet, but it's on her Twitter. That's what I was just reading off of. But it was a fascinating study in who is great. Sparked. I like to think it was sparked by the clip.
Sure.
So
listen,
the
the
show
action
really ignited that debate.
The action point is blazing trails. I mean, hey,
we're
listen.
we're knee deep into the hot topics of the day.
Listen. I mean, like, I agree. Okay, so here's the thing. I agree that we're witnessing the development of who the GOAT's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like, sure, if you look at the numbers, maybe Michael Fang
Mm-hmm.
would be the ideal thing. But like, it's funny you mentioned Magic the Gathering. You mentioned Kai Bud, and I forget who else you mentioned, but it was interesting you didn't mention John Finkel, who to my knowledge was considered
absolutely
one of the greatest of all
sure.
time. So listen, we can forget about a lot of people.
A memory gap because I have been separated for a very long time.
I'm just saying we could, sometimes.
Yeah, no,
history's
absolutely.
not kind to you.
Finkel is 100% there. I've always admired Brian Keebler and his Dragon decks. Now he's just a Commander guy. He plays Commander online with I don't know if they're married, but Olivia Gober Hicks, the Prism cosplayer, is a Commander person. They're a couple. They play Commander. 50,000 views a show. It's great. It's fantastic.
Well, listen, this podcast is right up there with it. You're gonna eclipse.
I don't think I've actually said it out loud. In my platform here as a guest here. Congratulations on crossing 500 subscribers.
Thank you.
When are you murdering Gary?
I have a bunch of cosplay supplies. It is going to be a process, but Gary will be murdered.
All right.
Excellent. I can guarantee that. Now, Now that we
Love you, Gary.
figured
You know,
out the goat,
I want you alive.
yeah, we figured out the goat thing. We solved it, right? That was us solving it. And now it never needs to be talked about again until it's brought up again on X or Twitter, and probably before this show even airs. But it is what it is. I'm happy that your channel got some press there. I know it can be frustrating if things are taken out of context, but free content. I was just on ISP. You know, I just recorded ISP, and we're going to talk about that towards the end. ISP earlier, and I was like, you know what? People are going to clip things. Less work I have to do. You know what? Put that content out there for me, all right? Yep. You know, so
yeah.
Nick, if you're watching, clip it. You know, all right? I'm the goat. All right? Listen, I don't care, but anyway. But let's move to the fresh faves, which, you know, is everybody's favorite segment of the show, including mine. We're going to do Dusk Till Dawn fresh faves because it's the most recent set. And
bring it on.
We have you on usually almost every set at this point. You know, you're one of
I did the Outsiders fresh faves.
Yeah,
that was me.
Now, who is your favorite hero from Dusk Till Dawn?
I came into Dusk Till Dawn really wanting it to be Bolton, but man, is he just bland. But it's Levia. I think there's an argument for people to say Vincent, and it's probably Vincent for most people, but she has not spoken to me. I have put together a few decks. I've tried her out. I'm not there yet. I'd like to give the Runaways lists, both Blitz and Constructed, a try. But I have been invested in my girl, Levia. So she is, despite her abuses of me, I think she's still, a clear favorite for me in Dusk Till Dawn.
Well, to be fair, and I'm with you there, obviously, with Levia, but I've been getting spanked by Raiden Bolton at Armory every week for the past couple weeks.
Yeah. I tell you what, there is something there. It is just bad against the right decks, which is the problem. I think Raiden Bolton, if you take out the S tier decks, whatever you might, we'll talk about, Constructed in a bit here. But if you take out those top decks, I think Raiden Bolton is one of the best aggressive decks into the field. So, don't be shy about sleeving that up. If you're going into a tournament that that's going to have Icelander, you're not going to have a great time. That's all.
Yeah. Now, what is your favorite weapon from Dusk Till Dawn?
There's not a lot of great ones to pick from, but I do like Decimator Great Axe, the new warrior weapon. I think it's still a little underwhelming in terms of what I want an axe to be for warriors. They seem to be pushing that kind of axe archetype over the last few supplemental sets, but it does appear that the Decimator Great Axe has opened up a couple archetypes with Dorinthia and Bolton into kind of like a blue heavy fatigue strategy that has some merit to it. We love, defensive decks have a place here, and they play much more defensively than they're used to. So because of the fact that I feel like it opens up a new archetype, I went with Decimator Great Axe.
That's a great answer. I think I would have gone Hellhammer. I think I'm a big fan of that.
Hellhammer is very close. I like Hellhammer. I do like Hellhammer. I like that it doesn't. I like that you can screw around with auras and spectra with it, and I think that's good. So it was a close second, but Decimator Great Axe.
It's an awesome weapon, and I mean, as soon as Bravo leaves, that might be the de facto defensive deck. Who knows? But what's your favorite equipment?
I love Scowling Flesh Bag. Scowling Flesh Bag. I need to be able to say it. But I think when it first came out, I think people saw that and went, Intimidate. That could be good. But I think upon execution, mostly in the Levia decks, it brings so much value to the hero. It can essentially block for like a massive amount of damage. If you take something like Briar, right? Briar on a CMH turn, they throw a big 10, draw a card, go again. They have one card in hand. It's going to be 7 more damage. You block with the Scowling Flesh Bag. Not only are you blocking 2 from that initial hit, you're intimidating that card away that they can't play for the rest of the turn. So you've spoiled that CMH turn. And you can insert that type of situation where, that follow-up card can potentially do you great harm, and that Scowling Flesh Bag eliminates that threat completely. So defensive intimidate is a great concept. I'd love to see more of it, and I think it's got more defensive value potential than Carrion Husk. So when you combine those two, it is like the mega fridge. I'll tell you what, it's so good that it frustrates me that Brute did not immediately rise up. It is that good a piece of equipment that I'm expecting more from both Reinar and Levia using it, and they're not there yet.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, Levia did move. I mean, it wasn't because of Scowling Flesh Bag, but like Levia did move from whatever garbage tier to like A tier, right? I just don't think the brute minds are working on Reinar right now, and I do think there's a lot of potential there as well. Even with Dig Up Dinner or whatever, that kind of seems like a lot of fun. What is your favorite other card? Non-attack actions, attack actions, and instance.
I think honorable mentions should go to Starstruck for Bravo. Is one card for the hero entered into the set, and it made an immediate impact. I think it's a large part of what has kept Bravo relevant. And typical Guardian, here's one card you can play 3 of, and it just makes an impact immediately. Guardians do good things. Obviously, Warmongers is the kind of the talk of the town. Should it be banned? Is it great? I think it's great. Shouldn't be banned. But there is no other card that we should be talking about as the best card other than the Demi Hero, Levia, Blasphemous Consumed, Levia Redeemed. It was the hottest card. It is basically the card of the set. And what else is there other than the new flippy hero?
Yeah. I mean, I gotta agree with you. And Starstruck is quite good. It's funny. It's like, yeah, you can hit the nail on the head. Guardian just needs a card that blocks and has relevant text, and it will be thrown into the deck. And that's it. And Warmongers, it's funny. It is quite good. Whatever. I got it wrong on the set review or whatever, but I was talking to a well-known pro and said it's not good. So I don't know. Maybe it's because the meta shifted to a point where it's not as good, but who knows? It's still,
I think,
scary.
I think Warmonger. I'll say this: Warmongers is fine. I think there's a lot of bitching from players who are so used to playing these decks that have just exploited the everyman for so long. And there's finally an answer that shuts them up. And that's the last thing they wanted. You bunch of front runners. It's 3 cards. All right. Azalea is not off the market completely. It's 3 cards. You know what was tough? Getting 4 non-attacks to buff an arrow to 17, make it dominate. Fire it off, make me lose my turn, watch you bring it back to the top of the deck the next turn. It's not fun. That's not fun. You complain about Warmongers. Go home.
Tell us how you really feel, Pat. But
I'll tell you, I'm just gonna throw in I see on here what's the worst card of the set. What is the stupidest card ever printed? Is Lost in Thought. Thank you very much. Hate that card.
Well, you get a ponder.
Oh,
no, it's still very good.
Christ.
Yeah, that card's brutal.
I can't with that.
Well, luckily Prism's not good. Allegedly, I mean, according to Brian Gottlieb, we're just missing what we're supposed to be doing with it, which gives me a lot of hope for a lot of the stuff that they print. It's just like, you're missing it, and we're not going to tell you.
Word on the street. It's the word on the street, though.
What's the word on the street?
Prism.
Prism's back.
Prism's not bad. It's unsolved.
Unsolved, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of unsolved things going on. I bet they're just chuckling at these Leviathan decks, these Bolton
I
decks,
think
and these.
we touched on it a little bit on with Rhea on my episode there, but I think you're going to see a stronger than normal Prism, like stronger than expected Prism presence. I think people have been keeping it in their pockets and not sharing what they've got. Even though there's been a couple, Fino's got a video out, optimal Prism builds and stuff. I'm not. I actually, full disclosure, have not watched it, so I don't know what his build looks like. But
I'm sure it's great.
We're of the understanding that it's Prism is stronger than has been presented.
Interesting. Well, I mean, we will see this weekend at Nats because, well,
right.
it's coming and it's gonna be a big weekend. I think there's like a lot of anticipation here in terms of like where the meta shakes out. I think we kind of figured out what the better decks are, but there could be those dark horses like Prism, yada yada yada. Now, draft. We've been drafting Monarch. Well, I mean, some of us have been drafting Monarch for a very long time. Some only recently. What are your takes here on draft? I mean, are we really going to see anything crazy here?
No, and I don't think. I think the draft portion ends up being some of the, I guess, less than sexy part of the show. They're gonna get to a featured table. They're gonna follow a draft. It's very interesting to watch people go through their picks, but I think Monarch is. I think after a few weeks of drafting it, starting with Dusk Till Dawn, I think people kind of settled into the draft meta and what to do there. And my observations are this. You are rewarded in this format for drafting your seats, which is, I think that's low hanging fruit. But there are people that will force Prism, right? And you may be rewarded for that, but I think you would be more rewarded if you just play the hero that you get the cards for, right? Just play your good cards. I do think that of all 4 heroes available in draft, I think Bolton low key is like the best draft hero, which is like almost completely opposite from the like constructed side, right? It's like Bolton gets kind of the crapped on, but its weapons are the best. And I think you can be very flexible in your draft picks with Bolton. It can play a lot of generics, and I think it's one of the best decks where Belittle and the Minnowism comes in. You can draft heavy on the blue side and on the yellow side. You don't necessarily need to have a bunch of heavy reds. You can use those axes to your to your advantage, and you can set up massive turns. And I don't think people really expect it coming from Bolton until they're hit with like a 15-17 damage turn well into the game, and all their cards are gone because they have to block. But I do think that Bolton, if you can draft a great Bolton deck, I think you have the best chance of winning your pod. I'd say that.
Yeah, Bolton seems to, some people, it's such a varied opinion on Bolton in Monarch draft that like some people say this is the worst deck, yada yada. But like I've seen it do the thing that you're talking about, right? I've seen it. And it can be very scary because has the best end game, I think, typically, because Chain, whatever, yeah, Chain could just lose to itself. Levi could lose to herself. And Prism could just not get enough power. And I mean, like Bolton certainly probably really needs to focus on like poppers, I guess, probably more than the other heroes because they got a little bit more available to them. I guess Prism maybe the same way, but it'll be interesting. I don't know if anybody's like found out something about Monarch draft. That people are gonna be like, oh no, this team found out that you could do this or whatever. I think it's pretty well well, I guess well trodden in terms of what they've done.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll be excited to just see some Levia limited on stream. She's my favorite to draft in Monarch, not surprisingly, but it is kind of fun to see. Like, if you get the right cards for Levia in Monarch draft, it does feel like it's unbeatable, right? If you just like Dread Screamers and Hooves and whatever,
right.
All of a sudden you feel like you're playing a different game than the rest of the table, but you got to be the 1 or 2 Levia drafters, and that's usually true of most things. But Levia does have that kind of raw power that you don't see in a lot of like commons and stuff like that in other decks. So it should be interesting.
And I do think that like Levia's got that. I don't know if Chain has like a huge impact card outside of like it's just battery of stuff. But I think Bolton has both the Spill Blood is what I'm looking for.
Sure.
Right. Spill Blood and Via the Vanguard is a rare. And I think both of those cards have, I think, that type of potential for your game. Like, especially if you can get a V off, it's
oh yeah. But yeah, we're talking rares and majestics at that point, but but I think V's definitely.
I'm sorry, I don't know what we're supposed to talk about draft. Those don't show up as much as that.
I don't. I mean, well, the rares show up. I swear that the rares show up, but the majestics. Come on, I mean, I've opened,
for sure.
I've opened 2 cases of Dust Till Dawn and I have all the majestics, so it's just like it is what it is.
There's a lot. Yeah. Supplemental sets. Those are meant by singles, folks.
So with draft being a huge part of this, how do you think that affects Constructed here?
I think historically, having draft as a part of your day 1 and day 2 has allowed for a bit more variety in Constructed. Right? If you have a fully constructed, if your format is strictly classic constructed and you have 7 to 10 rounds, right, whatever, 13 rounds of classic constructed over 2 days to try to get to a top cut there, you're building the most consistent deck that you can play over that period of time. Right now, if you essentially have those constructed games, you can start playing with variants a bit more. I think so. You can skew a little wild. I think you're more open to things like Rogue Brews. Like, you only have to play 3 or 4 games in a day as opposed to 8 games in the day. So you can avoid awkward matchups because of gem, right? You can do a lot of things, and especially if you are a stronger limited player than you are constructed, you're going to lean on that, and so you might show up with whatever you're comfortable with on constructed, but you'll see people in the top tables of one or the other, right? Going into day 2, you might see someone who's strong constructed, weak and limited, and in day 1, you're going to see someone who was really strong and limited, not so good at constructed possibly, but those kind of things will affect the pairings and the type of matchups I think you're going to see as the days progress. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I mean, if you're a great limited player, you love these formats, but you gotta, you likely will stick with what you're comfortable with, and that could be anything, right? It could be Bolton, it could be Riptide. Like who the heck knows? Which for sure are on the lower echelons of the tier list. If you look at what Tarek Patel posted on X today, this is it's going to be very, very interesting. Icelander, right out the gates, 3 wins Icelander had. 2 of them with Rhea Adams, and the third over in the UK. Sam, I think his name was Sam, beat Pablo Pintor. What is the standing of Icelander in this meta? Because while it's a pretty good deck, the only real boon it got was Warmongers, I guess, really? Like, or is it's just like kind of everything kind of shifted to a point where she can shine.
Well, I think she's in the right hands, right? She is going to she's going to disrupt the crap out of you, right? She's going to completely at some point, almost like old Prism, right? She's going to take some damage and eventually she's going to stabilize. And when she stabilizes, your cards just disappear from your hand. And the moment that happens, doesn't matter how much damage you were being dealt, or you were dealing to her. Once those cards are gone, your tempo is shot. You have to really work hard to come back. But she does that. That tempo game where once your cards are gone, she can get your life total close, and once your life totals are even, she's gonna try to keep that going until you get into the single digits. And then Stormstriders gives her that half turn that you just can't stop, right? You're gonna overextend even if you don't want to. Like, you may have a yellow in hand and something in arsenal, and all you can do is attack. And she breaks Stormstrider, she plays Emeritus, she follows up with a Waning Mood at instant speed, and there's nothing you can really do about that. But it does take a certain person to really navigate those Stormlands in those first few turns before you can get your Insidious Chills or really arsenal and pocket those Aether Ice Veins and save your fuse cards and know when to block, when not to block, that kind of deal. That really takes a lot of familiarity that a lot of people just don't have. So in the hands of Joe average player, is Iyslander a world beater? No, but at Nationals, you are going to have some of the best Iyslander pilots in the world, sitting there. In Rhea Adams, you're going to have Majin Bay, is a phenomenal Iyslander player. If Hamilton has dropped Levia and picked back up Iyslander, perhaps. So it offers a very unique threat. That unavoidable, unpreventable arcane damage, the ability to disrupt, take cards from your hand whether you like it or not, is something you're seeing a lot of in newer heroes like Azuri and Vincent, that I think Iyslander kind of set the standard for. And I think all of those heroes, you see that ability to get the most value out of a certain turn cycle, force your opponent to play that fair game with you, and out efficient them turn cycle after turn cycle until you get to the kill zone, right? And Stormstriders, in her case, gives the ability to just pop off just a half turn before your opponent can be prepared for it. It just without Stormstriders, but Icelander's shit deck.
yeah. Because once you get down to the end, it's like, what do you do against it, right? And that's just the thing. Now there's a couple it's like I'm dead.
It feels very like Oldham and Bravo with the Blue Macho Grande, like late, when you're down, you've been working hard, you scratching and clawing against this Guardian, you feel like you've really done the work, and feels like they're on their back foot, and just all of a sudden they got 2 cards in a card in arsenal and they just pitch 2 blues and come in for 8 dominate. And it's like, oh well,
nothing I could do.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
And that speaks to the power of those decks, which obviously we're gonna have a lot of Bravo, right? I think we all know there's gonna be a lot of Bravo. There's clearly going to be a lot of Lexi, despite the conversion rates until this past weekend. Lexi was still one of the most represented deck, if not the most represented deck. It's the best aggro deck. Even without Bullseye Bracers, it's still a deck that is just still a force to be reckoned with. Slightly less powerful, and slightly less, I guess, regency against like Arcane without the Bullseye Bracers, right? You have to cut. It used to be able to actually have the Arcane barrier and a really good finishing piece at the same time. Now you got to choose one or the other. Or actually, you don't even get the choice of the other. You just get to choose one. So I imagine Lexi's going to be still big player. Now it all comes down to, well, who's playing Lexi and how those players did well or did in the draft. I would be super surprised if we didn't see at least one or two Lexis in top 8. What are some other decks you expect to see make the top tables?
Well, I think the core of it is going to be Lexi, Bravo, Dromai, and Icelander. Right? I think you can solidly say that those 4 whether or not they make it to the top tables are going to shape, I think, the meta and who and what can come up around them, right? We always talk about Dromai's poor conversion rate, but Dromai still shows up in numbers. And I think in both the Battle Hardened and the PTI event, I think it went something like Lexi. It was like Lexi, Icelander, Dromai, like Bravo, like in that order in terms of numbers. I may be off a little bit, but I think those 4 are solidly representing like the top tier of the meta, and they all present, their own myriad of strengths and ways to invalidate other decks from the game, completely. Bravo shuts down certain decks. Dromai shuts down certain decks. Icelander shuts down certain decks. So you have the field just below those, and it really, what you bring to the table has to either be able to avoid or handle, all 4 of those decks potentially. And it's just not realistic, right? Like everyone has a bad matchup unless you're Lexi right now. And I think that's the important thing, right? Lexi is likely going to be the most represented. I think at worst it has a 50-50 matchup into some decks, but I really don't think even into unless an Azuri really techs hard back into it, I don't think you're going to see a lot of Azuris come through. Dromai it completely invalidates Azuri. Azuri is good against Lexi, but there's no way to overcome that mismatch into Dromai. So I don't think you're going to see those assassins come up like that. But Lexi is just, I don't know. It's a class unto herself. And I don't even think necessarily like a heavy fatigue deck stands a chance these days. Without bracers, she lost like 8 damage on a big turn, but like she still does the thing, right? Yeah. 3 of a kind is crippling. We saw in that Battle Hardened finals, Taylor Crawford and Matt McInnes were just, it's like, it's 18-20 damage turns until the game was over. Very quick, very satisfyingly quick. But like that's just her consistency is just another thing altogether, right? Like she just has 50 arrows that hit for 4 or more, and that's all she does is just kill you with arrows over and over again. And that consistency is great. Like it's what makes her so good. But there are other heroes around there that if they can avoid some of the matchups are good against her. I like Katsu. I think is good into Dromai, and I think it can race Lexi. Like it's still, I don't think it's favored, but it has a fighting chance. Katsu's always kind of had a fighting chance against the the best aggro deck of the format, whatever it is. But like Chain and RTN season, Katsu aggro was the only deck that could potentially race it at that point, and it has the same capabilities now with the Bonds of Ancestry lines, the Dishonor combo lines there, that it can race Lexi, and if things go right, I think it's really good. It has a bad matchup against Icelander, and I don't like it into Bravo. So if you feel like you can avoid some of those, I think Katsu's definitely one of the decks outside of that top 4 that might stand a better than average chance in the constructed side. I also like the Rune Blades for the same reason. Both Royal Viserai and Briar have that high roll potential. We've started to see the reintroduction of that Nathan Crawford and your Dagon White Guardian Briar style recently, and I think that's out of necessity, right? it does seem like the constructed meta has slowed down a little bit outside of things like Lexi. So being able to defend and return an attack that is efficient, and gain some sort of incremental turn cycle value, and be able to turn that turn after turn into an end game scenario where you can capitalize and win seems to be what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And if a deck can do that or go over the top, then you're in a good spot. If it wasn't for Dromai, I would love Azuri right now.
Yeah, Azuri would look good for Dromai. I noticed you didn't mention our girl Levia in any of these conversations. Certainly
I know.
Certainly, I mean, certainly could creep up there, especially like you said, with the draft portion being a part of it. If a great limited player has Levia in their hands, we could see it.
Levia, the way I describe how Levia plays to people, right? It's like if you were at the top of a hill and you tripped and you started stumbling down that hill, right? And Levia is that, and as long as you stay upright, you are just flying down that hill.
Yeah.
At any given moment, you can hit a root and you can just. If someone can figure out how to just keep upright, right? She flies, right? If you hit your Blood Rush Bellow and Art of War turn, you can hit 26, 30 damage easy, no sweat, still Arsenal, and come back for more. And when she wins, she's at 22. All right,
she wins big.
You cannot stand a chance. If you're able to somehow avoid that, like those feel bads, like if you can take away the variance of scaps, or and successfully navigate over the course of a couple days that the Blasphemate consumed 13, right? If you can get there, then yeah, sure. She's probably the premier aggro deck, even above Lexi. But she's still got a bunch of bullet holes in her feet, so secretly she always got a place in my heart. So it'd be nice to see someone figure it out.
Well, I'm rooting for her, and to be honest, the more I think about it, especially kind of walking through this, is like, what would I bring, right? What would I bring? Like, if it wasn't Levia, right? Obviously I would bring Levia, but what is something that could crack? What's a dark horse? What would be your dark horse in this Nats?
Oh man, I guess if I had to pick one, I think Dorinthia never gets the respect it seems like, and every time we talk about who's coming out, like Oldham's leaving, Prism's leaving, this is Dorinthia's time, and it appears to never be Dorinthia's time. So I know she has a couple cards at this point that change the math equation a bit. Josh Lau, I did very well with her at the Battle Hardened, as Josh Lau is, tends to do there. But I think it's representative of her potential. She still has some, her ceiling is there, and she can be, blocked effectively. But there are things like that puncture card that kind of changes the math a little bit, and when you can do that and leak damage and get those Dawnblade counters on, she's really, really hard to stop. So I think a good Dorinthia pilot might stand a pretty good chance here. Yeah,
I mean, we'll say. Well, I'm sure we'll be saying that this is Dorinthia's time for the rest of Flesh and Blood's career, and she'll never.
Just gotta get rid of a few more cards somewhere.
No, they'll just keep giving her one really strong card, and just like, well, we don't have room for it at this point, But if I were to pick a deck that we're gonna see a dark horse win, right, or at least get into the top 8, control Rhinar, book it.
Sure.
3 copies of Numbskulls for those frostbites.
Yeah,
dig
I've
up
heard
dinner.
a lot of, yep.
Scowling Flesh Bag.
Yeah.
Whatever. They're doing it. I don't know. It could be cool. We'll see. But we got some listener questions, Pat. Unless you got a closing thought there.
Well, I do think like Reinar and Dash historically have had a pretty even matchup spread. So if Merrick Kemp shows up with Dash, I'd be afraid of him, and I would expect to see Dash somewhere in the top tables there. Same thing with Reinar, right? If you have a good Reinar pilot keeping everything 50-50 and just playing to their outs, you're gonna see them there. So I support that. Control Reinar, it's a good pick.
Yeah, I would like to see. I would just like to see it, or I would like to see, because I'm surprised you didn't pick it as your favorite weapon. Rugged Roller Reinar. Because you love rolling dice, but
man, I tell you what, I put that in my KO deck, and I love my KO deck, but man, it does the same thing that Leviathan does. It just hurts my feelings a lot. Every once in a while, that's one where I love the high of like 26 dominate and blitz and just winning on the first turn. But it's like Commander in that sense, right? It's like a casual Commander deck that has like a really spiky turn that you can pull off every once in a while.
Yeah.
Someone won a skirmish with KO, just so you know. They ran that weapon, I believe, as well.
I mean, that's pretty awesome. I think it's very cool. I'm glad it exists. And I tried building it for Leviathan because it's got a lot of those 1-for-6s. You roll 6 on scabs, you're off to the races. Now, first question comes from Crixus, who asks, as a fab dad, how do you balance work life and family life, content creation, and playing fab with other games? You kind of hinted at it before, but how do you do it?
Oh man, I fail miserably at it. So the biggest thing about that balance, right? Crixus is on the Fab Dads Discord. There is a Fab Dads Discord. Any of you TCG player fathers out there, there is a place where you can come and commiserate with us. So, there's Donnie K writes for Fabrec, Evan McGrew, who known entity. Fab TCG Cards, I believe, is the website where he writes on there. Fab Dad themes. You see the hashtag all over the place. We have a Discord. So if you're wondering, Crixus is in it. But if you're looking for a place to talk with us, we're available, and when we have family advice, we take care of one another, we vent, but it all comes down to that mental health aspect, right? You are who are you on the outside? You are a father, you are a husband, you are a worker, you are your profession, you are your other parts of your life. What are you for you? Right. And the first thing about that balance is identifying that, you are an individual and you deserve to have, your own time, your own hobby, your thing that makes you feel like an individual. So being able to prioritize that, I think is number one. And, everyone does that a little differently, but being able to at least set aside some time during the week in which you say that you're going to do something for yourself is huge. So, some people go fix cars, some people go read a book, some people do, X, Y, and Z. A lot of us choose to play cards. So, step one is identifying that and knowing that, I'm going to spend my time that I feel to decompress, doing trading card related things. One of the things that got me in trouble in content creation and playing card games was that I did let it take over. Right, I was here 6-7 nights a week, and it was not the greatest thing for that work family life balance. So what I have personally done is kind of sectioned off my week. I have nights that I know that I have a few extra hours here and there that I have set aside, and those are the nights where I'm comfortable sitting on here and doing my thing. The nights that we're around, I'm off completely. Awesome. And that has been a thing. I used to not be off completely on the nights that she was around, and that's what was very frustrating for her. So we just turn it off and we don't do the thing. She allows for a few exceptions, but that's basically, I think, the heart of that kind of work card balance. Now, in terms of other games, I I don't have a big competition coming up, right? So if I had nationals coming up, if I had worlds or whatever coming up, I don't think I would be into like Alpha Clash as much as I am. So my lack of needing to spend more of my time preparing for a large event has opened up a small avenue into other card games. I will say that I do have, in terms of my commitment, I am a Flesh and Blood player and Flesh and Blood collector, and that is where the majority of my disposal financial resources go into. Alpha Clash is very much a secondary game where, as long as it is affordable to carry such, I have one or two working decks that can compete reasonably well. But I'm not looking to complete a collection. I'm not looking to get the highest max rarity version of the cards, and I'm not looking to get slabs of anything or anything like that. I'm just looking to be able to hold a deck or two and be able to play decently with other people. And so that's how that part of that I think is getting balanced.
Well, I'm glad that you're finding the balance. Balance is tough, I've been right in your shoes where a little bit too much time was spent here, and you just got to commit to not doing that. I guess it's pretty much
yeah. Like you got to commit hard to yourself to like being right. It's okay for you to do this, but that means it's also important for you to know when to step away.
Yeah.
For whether that's for the evening or whatever, right? It's family first, then this, family, job. This is kind of as long as the first two aren't being interfered with, have at it.
Amen. Now, Dead Summer, our friend Kale asks, do you think Vincent has what it takes to take the top spot, I guess, at Nats? And if so, what sort of build do you think is most efficient?
I don't. The short answer is I don't think it has what it takes to be in the top spot right now. Its matchup spread is pretty abysmal. It doesn't seem like it can really win consistently across the board, and I think that has a lot to do with the nature of how LSS has kind of reintroduced these hero classes to us, right? So Monarch and Tails, super pushed, right? Super overpowered. Chain was insane, right? Prism was insane. Luminaris brought crazy things. Seeds of Agony, right? You just had Shadow Runeblade was awesome. You like filtered through your deck in 3 turns. You dealt 37 arcane damage and Riftbind. You did some silly things there. With Dusk Till Dawn, right? They've brought in these fixed versions of Prism, right? In a Light Illusionist and a Shadow Runeblade. And when they did that, I don't think they introduced as much to the table as they could have and really pushed the envelope there. We saw the same kind of thing with like Arachne, right? In Dynasty, where here's an archetype, here are the cards for it. Might be missing a few cards to really bring it over the top. But here's your hero and the hero map that you'll need to do that. I think they've done basically the same thing with those 2 heroes, and focusing on Vincent is taking advantage of that kind of almost guaranteed disruption philosophy that it seems like they're going with. I brought up like Azuri as another example that isolate into swapping into something like a Command and Conquer, where unless you prepare for it specifically, you can't block. You're going to be hit with this thing. You're going to be hit with a Shakedown. You're going to be hit with a Command and Conquer. You will lose cards. Vincent is kind of in the same vein where it can make sure that arcane damage is unpreventable, and those rune gate effects only care about loss of life in the turn, not that something hits. So as soon as one of those rune chants pops you for 1, you're losing, with the Majestics, right? You're losing the top of the deck. You're losing your something in your hand. You're losing something in the arsenal. You can play around that to an extent, but where I think it fails is that it doesn't quite have a scale up as far as I can see. Um, there's not like a super massive turn that is kind of like a trademark of some of these like top tier decks, like a 3 of a kind Lexi turn, right? And you have your Icelander Stormstrider's turn. A Dromai doesn't so much have something like that, but it has these like super killer dragons, right? That are always you're developing your board state of inevitability there with Dromai, and even with Brava, right? There's the inevitability of something like a Macho Grande or a late uh, Terra Sunder, or something like that, where there's like a guaranteed finisher happening. So I do think that in terms of like what is the best iteration of Inset, I do think that the Runaways version is there. Like it effectively uses Pummel, as an additional on hit and help support some of that extra kind of tempo grabbing, but you're still in a Runeblade package where you need to balance your non-attacks and your big attacks. You're typically only attacking one. You might have something like a Shadow Puppetry where you can chain multiple attacks together. It's not often. I think heroes can play around it as well. There is the occasional unpreventable arcane damage, but for the most part, kind of similar to like Arachne Contract, something like Deathly Wail happens a lot in that deck, and it doesn't necessarily it doesn't stop your opponent from playing the game, right? It doesn't disrupt what they're doing. So similar to how like a Plunder the Poor or any number of the contracts that aren't Leave No Witnesses. If they're just taking a card off the top of their deck, right? No one cares. If you get a silver out of that, we're not valuing that card off the top of the deck like you would. I don't think we're valuing either life gain or necessarily rune chant generation in those Runegate cards in the same way that Vincent is valuing them in the long term there. And when you have those attacks that don't disrupt your opponent, it leaves them, I think, incredibly open to the clapback. And with some of those heroes, you can't afford to get clapped back. There, So, if you don't have the pummel on the Deathly Wail to get that over the top, then you're in trouble there.
Yeah, it feels like they had the clunky the clunky Runeblade hands that you get in Runeblade decks, right? Feel worse in this because your game plan kind of falls apart. Now Vincent's probably still good, right? But
it is still good.
Yeah,
I don't think it's big enough or fast enough to, on either side to really get to the top of that mountain there. If you were able to incorporate some of the classic Shadow and Shadow Runeblade cards, I think a little more effectively, there might be something there just because you have kind of a known quantity and you might have something with the Go Again on there. But I tried to do something like that with like Ghostly Visits and whatever the one that has Go Again from Banished, I forget, but it didn't work, so I scrapped it. Is the problem there. But it does its thing, it does it well. I think it just needs, if it's gonna be Shadow Guardian-esque in that it's gonna set up like a huge turn with one attack and have it big and be majorly disruptive. I think it also needs to scale up perhaps its defensive package there, and that might not be some I don't know if we have that in hand. There is some variants that run heavy defensive packages, but not to like staunch response type of effectiveness.
And it's hard to get there, right? It just for Runeblade because they just operate differently. But Vincent, maybe one day. Now Sigma, our dear bud, asked, what do you think about dice in Flesh and Blood? And do you believe Brute has a place in it as the highest variance class? Is it still fun and worth it even if you roll ones? I mean, you've been playing a lot of Levia. You mentioned your KO deck. I mean, obviously there's something going on.
Right. It's chasing that high. It's trying to ride that dragon, trying to get there. There is no greater high than rolling a 6 and being able to use all 3 action points, right? Yeah. Like it's just like it's just pants off. It is fantastic. But like the reality of it, right, is so rare that there's not it just doesn't happen that often. But it's like winning the lottery. So like there is something there to that. I've been playing a lot of Levia, but one of the main reasons is that I invested into it. I sold out of Levia. I bought into Levia. Gotta use the cards. Gotta use them. So they're there. So I'm using them. Do I believe that Brute has a place as the highest variance class? I think one of my foundational beefs with Flesh and Blood is that they have allowed superbly consistent decks exist in the same world as incredibly high variance decks. Sure. And it has been proven, I think time after time, that when it matters, consistency is always going to win out over variance.
Sure. And
that, I think that plays out with every hero that has been living legend or close to living legend. Their main thing has been consistency or ways to mitigate variance, right? If we take Oldhim, right? Oldhim, like the most consistent of consistent things, right? We pitch, we pitch stack all the time. We bonk and we wait for a second cycle and we just hit, and it just does the thing. And you do that all the time. Bravo does that right now all the time. We look at Chain, right? Chain, Runeblade has some variants on the non-attacks, but especially when Seeds of Agony was there, right? You got to filter, you got to pitch stack. You could pitch stack in inevitable game state. So when you had 8 shackles, you drew exactly what you were going to do. It mitigated whatever was going wrong with your hand by having the ability of having an extra hand, in your banish zone that you could just use whenever you wanted. So if you didn't have quite what you needed here, you had it, there as well. You saw something like, I could go on, right? Yeah. Prism, the same thing, right? Like transformational sideboard, but once it transformed, it either did the aura thing really well or it did the herald thing really well, and it just beat you over the head with whatever version that was. Those decks exist in the same game that like friggin' Briar, man, where like Sonata Arcanix is supposed to be, one of those, it's a game killing card. When they banned Skeletor to stop Viserai from taking over, like the OTK Vis, the ability to just whiff, right? You faced a Starvo that was just like, I have built my deck to just ignore whatever fun thing you thought you could do with Starvo. I just maximized my ability to fuse. So I went from what you thought was a high variance deck to a deck where they ensured that you could get the Starvo fuse 66-ish% of the time.
Pretty crazy.
Right? Like it was consistent, and it did a thing. Meanwhile, Viserai built up rune chants and then broke Skeletor, played Sonata for 15, closed its eyes, and hoped for the best. Yeah. And sometimes, sometimes it happened. But a lot of times it didn't. And it started not happening enough where it really, when Viserai was in that triangle, like it was third, right? You had Prism, Starvo, and then Viserai. Like it just wasn't.
Well, almost at one point, Shane rose above Viserai, right?
Yeah. Well, once Skeletor got the boot, they crippled Viserai and just replaced it with another Runeblade, which I will never forgive them for. But they either need to give the high variance classes a touch more consistency, or right, or vice versa.
Well,
I think to bring balance to the force here, because I don't think there is balance.
well,
If
but
we're looking at,
I will say though, Pat, and you kind of touched on it with Vincent. It seems to be somewhat of a paradigm shift because I feel like Vincent is not the consistent Runeblade we've seen. Like it's the least consistent Runeblade. Like sure, Viserai has some off turns, but Viserai could still manage to pull it out. Chain was super consistent at its peak. I think Briar even feels very consistent. I know you mentioned that Briar can feel not consistent, but when Briar's definitely, I mean, it's not Brute, right? And New Prism is certainly not Old Prism.
Yeah, new Prism for sure. But like, so even like right now, right? We have Lexi, right?
Yeah.
All arrows all the time, and if it's not doing arrows, it's drawing arrows, right?
Yeah.
Dromai, right? Attacks and dragons all the time. If it's not attacking, it's making a dragon, and that's what it's doing, right? Bravo, guardian things, right? Icelander, it's strictly not. It's ice non-attacks. It's doing its thing. It's 100% consistent. Even when you get into like the ninjas, right? The ninjas are super consistent, and then they just don't have like they still have enough opportunity to variance to kind of stumble.
Yeah.
When it matters, right? Phi draws a blue, it's all over.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and it's one of those things where it's they're super consistent, but they're the caveat, the thing that makes them kind of lose a little bit is just devastating.
Sure.
Right. And like Brute is just in a class in itself where like that you get so punished for rolling a 1, right? Yeah. And I think at the heart of it, I think the punishment for not rolling what you need is too high for Brute. So if you brought that punishment down, that I think that could begin the conversation here into rehabbing our relationship.
A new Gambler's Gloves, right? Where if you pop it, you get to reroll and deal 10 damage. Unblockable.
Yeah, sure, that would be great. But I like if they redid Scabs where you just couldn't get 3 action points but just didn't lose the game if you rolled 1, right? Like that would be that would be my happy medium. I don't care if it had temper on it or whatever, but like if you roll a dice, if you roll 4 or higher, you just get an action point, right? And and it has go again, right? Like, and that's it. Like that's all
I mean, that's wishful thinking. I don't think it'll ever happen. I mean, there's no downside to ever rolling it. You're just like, wow,
you just don't get the action point. The downside is that like Brute can, like, if Brute just attacks for 6, like it's and that's the reason I roll so much on Leviathan is that like if I just hit a Boneyard Marauder, I feel like my turn sucks, right? Like if I don't have like Dread Screamer into X, then like I have to manufacture that that tempo, right? The thing that is making me go burr is I think my floor is 12 damage. Excuse me. If I'm not dealing 12 damage, I feel like I don't have an effective turn.
Sure, I get that, but then hey, listen, there's to play devil's advocate. Well, just block more, and you're gonna get value out of the blocking. So it's a I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I like rolling. Everybody knows that, and I don't mind the ones. I've learned to accept them, and it's part of my creed now. I just roll. Sure. And we'll see. But this next question comes from William Knuckles from Table Pit. What is the coolest train? Bringing you back on the rails, actually, right now.
I came prepared for this. What is the coolest train? It's a Class 37. There's nothing cooler than a Class 37 thrashing up a snaky incline. And if you don't know what that is, go check out Francis Bourgeois on TikTok and YouTube.
Francis Bourgeois.
Yeah,
I do know him. I do know.
With the GoPro right in his face. Yeah.
The next question comes from
Stole it from
Gary, aka Mr. Viz, who obviously you said you don't want him to be murdered by me, but it has to happen.
Not really. I just want to see it visually represented.
Yeah. Who is the goat? Oh wait, we already asked this. Wait, he asked. He gives us multiple choice. Billy Goat, Goat Cheese, or a Mountain Goat.
Gary. Gary. I don't have a funny retort for this. I do that. I mean, is there a different, like, is a Billy Goat different than a Mountain Goat? I guess. I'm gonna go with Mountain Goats. I like that specific Mountain Goat that like can stand on the cliffs. Yeah.
Oh,
Whatever species of goat that is, that's the best
I
goat.
think it's Mountain Goat. I do like goat cheese though. I like that tanginess.
I'm not a fan of the goat cheese.
It's not for everyone, that's for sure. Next question comes from Super Legend, who asks, "Is Marvel Snap a good game? And should I go back to it from Candy Crush?"
Good game, yes. Should you go back to it? It's tough. They updated the collector's reserve, and like how you obtain heroes, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I used to not have a problem getting new heroes, and now I do, and I'm not I don't like that. They're kind of held back into these spotlight reserves, is what they're called. But it's like every like fifth or sixth collector's cache is a spotlight one that'll give like two new cards and a new variant of an existing card that you may or may not have. And I don't like that. You have a chance at getting a card that you already have, while two new ones are just staring you at in the face, and it takes a real long time to get into those spotlights there. So it's a good game if you have the heroes to have like a competitive-ish deck. It's a good. It's still fun. The conquest mode is very rewarding. It is a fun mode to play. So if you don't want to grind the ladder, you can go into conquest mode and play it a little differently, and it rewards a bit more of a unique deck being played there. So, it's up to you.
Cool. You heard it here first, folks. And the last question comes from Capolo, who says, "There's a lot of talk of the greatest of all time, aka the GOAT. Who is the BAT? The Buds or Bud Always Talented?" We got to work on the acronym, but basically, who's the greatest Bud of all time?
Oh man, you know what? I'm not gonna cop out and say you. Hold on.
Well,
That's fine.
I'm not the Bud part of the name of the podcast. I'm the first part. I'm fresh. So.
That's fair. That's fair. Let's see.
I mean, it's hard, right? Everybody's great.
It is. There's a lot of good buds here.
Yeah.
Oh man. There's some real throwbacks. You remember like Brew Tapcast? Remember
Yeah,
him?
Russ. Shout out to Russ.
Yeah, man. I haven't heard from him so long. Caleb, OG, he's a good one. Obviously Gary, Copy Cody. I don't see him much these days. Yeah. I'm just really, man. Have we been around?
Actually, we got to give it to Copy Cody. Copy Cody was the first person to enter the Discord. Before I even posted about it, he just popped in. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing here? I don't know. What are you doing here?" It was very fun. But that's going to do it for the show. Shout out to Cody. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Thank you for coming on, Pat. We did not keep you on the rails. It is my pleasure today, as always. You
can't. Nothing can hold me.
Yeah, nothing can hold you. Can you please plug everything that you need to plug?
Sure. You can find me on YouTube. My channel's Off the Rails TCG. It's the @ Off the Rails TCG on YouTube. It's the same on Twitter. You can find my personal Twitter is @PatSmashGood. I'm still trying to find, I don't know, the relationship between my two Twitter accounts. I'm slightly more active than I used to be on the Off the Rails one. But you can, if you need me, go find me on @PatSmashGood. If you like the channel, we'll make sure to find it, like it, subscribe, all that good stuff. The next episode of The Action Point should be coming out end of the week, and yeah, we're kind of we're gonna see how long we can ride this around the horn style format, having fun with it, and it's kind of reignited that little spark there, and we'll see where it goes.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. Check it out, please, everybody. You can continue to find me on X or Twitter or whatever at Fresh Buds Pod. Buds Discord's awesome. Patreon's really cool. YouTube's awesome. This is all in the link tree. Do you got some food you want to talk about?
I do. When this was audio only, people didn't have to watch me slowly die as I lose my voice over time, but it's happening. So I'm going to try to keep it quick. So I actually had to run it back to make sure that I didn't already talk about this, but I haven't. So I don't know if this was just a moment of genius for myself or if this is commonplace around the world, but there is a place called Pebbles. I live in a waterfront town. We're big into food. The Pebbles in particular is really everything you want from like a walk up, like local kind of like diner style place, right? The grill's in the back. Everyone's hustling and moving. You get your burgers, you get your fries, you get your hot dogs. We're also famous for our clam chowders, right? All the places in the waterfront have delicious New England clam chowder. Oh, as a chowderhead myself and an aficionado of grilled foods, one time at Pebbles, I got both the clam chowder and a hot dog. And I sat down and I went, can one combine these two and not tear a hole into the fabric of time and space? And so I tried to find out, and I did. I took my hot dog, I dipped it into the clam chowder, and I bit into it, and it was the most delicious thing I have ever experienced. So I then got more hot dogs from Pebbles. I got 2 more hot dogs that day, and I topped them with the clams and a bit of the chowder and the potatoes, and I had the chowder soup bowl as like a dipping sauce, and I created what I dub the Cape Codder, and it is a hot dog topped and surrounded by and accompanied by New England clam chowder. A fantastic summer food, and don't knock it till you try it. So the Cape Codder hot dog clam chowder.
Well, Pat, you're not doing me a lot of favors here in convincing people that this is not a weed podcast, because that is the most stoner meal I've ever heard in my life, and it sounds amazing. So
I given that time period, it might have been. So
okay, all right. Well, hey, what can you do? Normally this would be the time when I would throw it to Charmer, but I can't this week, and that's because I need to address something that happened on Instant Speed podcast that should be out actually the same day as this. I was on with Flake, and as you know, Flake and I have been friends for a very long time, but I don't know if that's going to be the case anymore, because, well, you can go check it out for yourself if you go over to the YouTube. He was rude, and he was brutal. Honestly, I did not have a good time, and you really need to see it for yourself. So go check it out. I mean, I don't want to give him free views, right? But I think it's worth checking out over there, because you could not believe. It was like, I was like, who is this person? I mean, I thought I knew him, but
I really set in motion a whole series of just negative events. I brought him on. I thought it was going to be a good time, and just everything's careening away. I'm sure there's something inside there. It's probably not you, but man, does that guy have terrible luck with flights. If you caught him on the wrong day,
I don't know.
Might have just gotten the horns.
I don't know.
I'm intrigued.
I will say, when I first met him, I was iffy at first because, well, he's Canadian, and you know how we are, and then we became friends. But who knows? I think this might be the end. So go comment on his video that Tommy sent you, and yeah, it is what it is. So thank you, everybody. Have a good week.